January 6 defendants are increasingly hopeful about potential pardons from President-elect Donald Trump, who has pledged to consider clemency for those charged in connection with the Capitol attack. Trump's transition team is reportedly reviewing cases, though prosecutors and most judges continue to press forward with trials and sentencing, emphasizing the importance of justice. Some judges, however, have postponed trials, citing the uncertainty of pardons. Critics argue that such pardons would undermine the Justice Department's efforts and fail to erase the gravity of the January 6 events. Meanwhile, outgoing President Biden is using his clemency powers for other cases, highlighting contrasting approaches to criminal justice. Many young investment bankers on Wall Street use stimulants like Adderall and Vyvanse to endure long hours, tedious work, and intense competition despite the drug's addictive potential and risks. The accessibility of ADHD medications through telehealth and boutique clinics has fueled widespread use, with some professionals describing these drugs as essential tools for their demanding jobs. Abuse of stimulants often leads to dependency, adverse side effects like anxiety and weight loss, and in severe cases, long-term personality changes and health issues. Some bankers resort to alternative substances like nicotine pouches and energy drinks for performance enhancement, further highlighting the unsustainable work culture. Tragic consequences, including beta overdoses and mental health struggles, underline the dangers of this reliance on stimulants to cope with extreme workplace demands. Fertility rates are declining globally, and some scientists attribute this partly to everyday chemicals called endocrine disruptors found in products like plastics, cosmetics, and packaging, which may harm reproductive health. These chemicals, such as PFAs, BPA, and phthalates, can disrupt hormones and have been linked to issues like lower sperm counts, poor egg quality, and conditions like polycystic ovary syndrome and endometriosis. While regulatory bodies like the US EPA and FDA acknowledge potential risks, debates persist over what exposure levels are harmful, and current testing methods may underestimate dangers. Researchers like Shauna Swan have found significant declines in sperm counts and fertility in humans and animals, suggesting widespread exposure to these chemicals has broad implications. Calls for tighter regulations are growing, with Europe proposing stricter limits on BPA and US scientists urging similar actions to reduce chemical exposure in everyday products. President-elect Donald Trump's team is emphasizing targeted deportations of immigrants with criminal records, a narrower approach compared to his earlier campaign promise of mass deportations. Trump's advisors, including incoming border czar Tom Homan, highlight practical constraints like resource limitations and lack of cooperation from blue states and cities, making large-scale deportations challenging. Immigration hardliners worry the narrowed focus may signal a retreat from broader enforcement, potentially encouraging illegal immigration by implying leniency for non-criminal migrants. Trump's openness to protecting dreamers and working with Democrats on immigration legislation has further unsettled his hardline allies, who view such exemptions as a slippery slope. Critics argue the emphasis on criminals undermines deterrence by signaling to smugglers and migrants that non-criminals may avoid deportation, weakening the broader enforcement strategy. ABC News has settled a defamation lawsuit filed by President-elect Donald Trump, agreeing to pay $15 million to his presidential foundation or museum and $1 million in legal fees. The lawsuit stemmed from anchor George Stephanopoulos inaccurately stating Trump was found liable for rape when a federal judge had determined liability for sexual abuse. ABC News issued a public regret for the statements made during a March interview on This Week. Trump had previously been ordered to pay writer E. John Carroll damages for sexual abuse and defamation, with verdicts totaling $88 million, both of which he is appealing. The settlement resolves the dispute between Trump and the Disney-owned network. Donald Trump remains steadfast in implementing significant tariffs on imports from China, Canada, Mexico, and other countries despite ongoing lobbying efforts by business executives to modify his trade policies. Companies are struggling to influence Trump's decisions as he acts independently, often making sudden tariff announcements on social media without prior consultation with his advisors. Trump's administration, including key figures like Senator Marco Rubio and Treasury pick Scott Bessent, is committed to enforcing these tariffs to protect American economic interests, leaving little room for corporate exemptions. Business leaders fear that widespread tariffs could trigger a multifaceted trade war, raising costs for U.S. companies and consumers. Despite some hope among companies and Republicans that tariffs might serve as negotiation tactics, Trump's team remains resolute, making it challenging for businesses to alter his aggressive trade agenda. Apple plans significant design changes to its iPhone lineup, including a thinner model and foldable devices, to address stagnant sales after years of incremental updates. The foldable lineup includes a smaller iPhone-sized device and a larger, laptop-like model, though technical challenges may delay their launch until 2026 or later. The thinner iPhone will target cost-conscious consumers by simplifying features compared to the Pro models. Apple's iPhone business, still its revenue cornerstone, faces declining demand despite past successes like the iPhone 6 Plus and 5G-enabled devices. Additionally, the company explores growth through other products like the Vision Pro headsets, but faces hurdles with pricing, adoption, and performance. Elon Musk, despite being the CEO of SpaceX, does not hold the highest-level security clearances required to access sensitive government secrets related to the company's national security work, partly due to concerns over his drug use and foreign contacts. SpaceX lawyers avoided seeking higher clearance for Musk to prevent risks of denial or revocation of his existing top-secret clearance, which could complicate the company's national security contracts. Musk's limited clearance excludes his from areas of SpaceX operations involving classified intelligence and highly sensitive satellite programs like Starshield. With Donald Trump's presidential election victory and Musk's appointment to lead the Department of Government Efficiency, Trump could grant Musk access to classified information, bypassing traditional security vetting. Musk and his team are likely to need special clearances to evaluate classified military spending, which Trump has the authority to approve as Commander-in-Chief. SoftBank CEO Masayoshi Son pledged to invest $100 billion in U.S. artificial intelligence and technology projects, doubling his prior 2016 commitment to President Trump, despite lacking immediate access to such funds. To fulfill this promise, Son will need to secure external investors, incur debt, or liquidate assets, as SoftBank's financial situation is strained by $142 billion in debt and limited cash reserves. The pledge aligns with SoftBank's existing AI ambitions and could strengthen ties with the Trump administration, potentially benefiting from favorable regulatory policies. Critics view the announcement as a strategic move to curry favor rather than a fully new initiative, while skeptics question the feasibility of creating 100,000 jobs in tech-heavy fields. Son's history of high-risk investments, including past failures like WeWork, raises further doubts about the viability of the plan. Russian president, during a 4.5-hour TV session, expressed no urgency to end the Ukraine war, emphasizing Russia's incremental gains and resistance to Western pressure. He dismissed ceasefire proposals, stating they would allow Ukraine to rearm, and highlighted a need for lasting peace with security guarantees for Russia. Despite Ukraine's intensified strikes and a growing domestic economic strain, Putin portrayed Russia as resilient, downplaying setbacks like the fall of its ally Bashar al-Assad in Syria. Putin boasted about new weaponry like the Orshenik missile, challenging Western missile system, while warning of potential nuclear responses to existential threats. Domestically, he acknowledged inflation and economic challenges, but insisted the economy remains stable despite labor shortages and rising interest rates. The article examines how the White House adapted to President Biden's advancing age and diminished capacity during his presidency. Biden's aides tightly managed his schedule, shortened meetings, and controlled access to him, ensuring limited exposure to potential errors or fatigue. Key advisors often acted as intermediaries between the president and high-ranking officials, while scripted public interactions minimized risks of gaps. Concerns about his mental acuity became evident during a debate with Donald Trump, which marked the turning point leading to Biden's withdrawal from the 2024 election. Despite these challenges, his administration maintained progress on policy initiatives, though some insiders criticized the level of insulation around him. MSNBC and CNN have seen significant drops in ratings since Donald Trump's election victory, with MSNBC down by over half and CNN by 46%, while Fox News ratings rose by 12%. Viewership dips after elections often align with the losing side's political disenchantment, a pattern observed after prior presidential elections. MSNBC executives anticipate a ratings resurgence akin to the resistance viewing during Trump's first term, expecting action to draw liberal viewers back. MSNBC is updating its programming with the new anchors and segments, while CNN focuses on digital growth and high-profile roles like Caitlin Collins' dual responsibilities. As traditional cable audiences shrink, alternative platforms like podcasts are increasingly capturing politically engaged audiences. Bitcoin has evolved from a speculative asset to a $2 trillion market, with some Wall Street titans changing their stance on the cryptocurrency. Jamie Dimon of JP Morgan remains skeptical, calling it a pet rock and advising against involvement. Larry Fink of BlackRock now views Bitcoin as digital gold and a legitimate asset, having changed his perspective after further study. Ken Griffin of Citadel admitted his earlier dismissal was a mistake, but still questions Bitcoin's economic utility. Warren Buffett and Ray Dalio have also evolved. Buffett maintains his critical stance, while Dalio now sees Bitcoin as a hedge against rising debt and financial instability. India's efforts to combat air pollution, particularly in Delhi, have been criticized as ineffective, with residents labeling measures like anti-smoke guns and drones as band-aid solutions. Delhi's pollution worsens each winter due to factors like crop burning and vehicle emissions, but experts argue the government is not implementing the necessary long-term actions, such as stricter policies or pollution control across the region. While there have been improvements in public transport and reductions in particulate pollution since 2015, these efforts are overshadowed by pollution from nearby areas. China's successful air quality improvements contrast with India's slow progress, which experts attribute to a lack of public outcry and insufficient data for targeted solutions. Political parties have used pollution as a campaign issue, but the real solution remains elusive. The author expresses concern over the stock market's current state, highlighting extreme optimism among investors, which makes it harder for the market to rise and easier for it to fall. He points to high sentiment levels, with investor confidence at its peak since the dot-com and post-pandemic SPAC bubbles. Despite widespread excitement over AI and the U.S. economy, market valuations are increasingly detached from fundamentals, with cheap stocks underperforming and the earnings yield on stocks barely above treasury yields. Corporate executives, however, are selling more stock than they buy, suggesting they view prices as too high. While not predicting an immediate market collapse, Macintosh recommends reducing exposure due to these warning signs. Increasing numbers of men are becoming addicted to high-risk stock market trading, including options and cryptocurrencies likened to gambling due to its accessibility via brokerage apps. Gamblers Anonymous meetings are witnessing a surge in attendees struggling with trading addictions, with many reporting massive financial losses and severe emotional tolls like depression and suicidal thoughts. Addiction counselors report a rise in cases tied to speculative trading since the pandemic, with patients often experiencing withdrawal symptoms and seeking help from specialized treatment centers. The ease of use and gamified nature of apps like Robinhood and Webull blur the line between investing and gambling, contributing to compulsive trading behaviors. Many individuals have been driven to self-help groups or interventions by loved ones after suffering significant financial losses and personal consequences from their trading habit. OpenAI's next-generation AI model, GPT-5, codenamed Orion, is delayed and facing high costs and technical challenges, with insufficient high-quality data being a major hurdle. The company is attempting to create its own data through human experts and synthetic AI-generated materials, but has encountered difficulties in scaling this approach effectively. Competition in the AI industry has intensified, with rivals like Anthropic and Google gaining ground, and internal turmoil at OpenAI has led to key departures. Researchers are exploring new strategies, including reasoning-based AI models, to enhance Orion's intelligence, but these approaches remain costly and unproven. OpenAI CEO Sam Altman remains optimistic but has not committed to a release timeline for GPT-5. Private prison companies such as Geo Group and CoreCivic are preparing to expand operations in anticipation of President-elect Donald Trump's proposed mass deportation plans, which may require significantly more detention beds and staffing. Geo Group plans to scale its detention capacity and electronic monitoring services, while CoreCivic is exploring reopening and expanding facilities, including potentially detaining families and unaccompanied minors. These companies expect emergency orders from the Trump administration to expedite hiring and contract processes. The potential deportation operation, targeting millions of undocumented migrants, is estimated to cost $88 billion for 1 million removals in a year. Smaller companies and contractors like Asset Protection and Security Services and Classic Air Charter are also gearing up to support these efforts, viewing it as a major business opportunity.